A stark new warning from NASA. There's more brutal heat in store for the months ahead. In 2024, it's expected to be even hotter than this record-breaking summer. Already the heat is deadly, killing at least a dozen people in the South, including a 10-month-old baby girl in a hot car in Florida. Officials tell our local affiliate that temperatures in parked vehicles can jump 20 degrees in just 10 minutes. It was more than 133 inside the car where she died. That's why in Texas, two parents broke the glass of their car after they accidentally locked their baby inside with the keys, racing against the clock. And already nearly 100-degree temperatures. They crawled in through the shattered windshield and pulled that infant to safety. Then there are the extreme storms hitting the country, including unbelievable video of a tornado that pummeled North Carolina. Check this out. It just ripped the roof off a house. And then there's the devastating flooding inundating the nation. Ohio, the latest state to be buried in torrential rain. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns is with me. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is live from Galveston, Texas. Priscilla, record temperatures in Texas, record energy demand. How are they preparing for what could be a very long haul?
Yeah, Chris, a long haul indeed. We are talking about weeks and weeks and weeks of these record-breaking temperatures. We know that there are cooling centers that have opened in various parts of the state to try to help folks who may not have AC. And as for that energy man, that's something that the power grid operator is watching very closely. They've been issuing weather watches when they feel like demand is going to be extremely high, urging people to conserve energy and to just be mindful of those demands. And so far, there have not been any major issues with the grid, and folks are encouraged to stay inside in the AC during these just blistering hot temperatures. I'm here at the beach, and there aren't a ton of folks out enjoying the beach on a Friday afternoon in July, likely because of just how hot it is here. It is in the 90s, but it feels more like 108 in the 100s here right now. And people are certainly like paying attention to that. You talked about the story of the children being left in cars. To date, there have been 14 children this year that have died across the country because of being left in hot cars. And so that is something that people need to be mindful of right now as we are continuing to deal with this extreme heat. There was also that 71-year-old man who officials say died while hiking in Death Valley earlier this week in 100-plus degree heat. And the LA Times actually interviewed him before he collapsed and died, and he was taking shelter under a metal sign there. And they spoke to his wife, who said that he just really wanted to hike Death Valley. It was super important to him. But people have to be mindful of just how hot it is outside and really taking the precautions where they can. And of course, if you are coming out to the beach or heading outside and you want to partake in an adult beverage, a cold beer, a frozen margarita, just keep in mind that that is not going to hydrate you. That will actually dehydrate you. And one of the things that officials are saying is that folks have to make sure if they're outside, you're drinking water and you're paying attention to the needs of your body during this just incredibly long stretch of heat. Chris?
Priscilla, I hope you have somewhere air conditioned to go to right now. Thank you so much for that report, Bill. It's not the record highs, yes, but also the duration of this is something that I don't remember, and obviously the records show hasn't happened before. Any relief in sight?
I have my eyes set on like maybe the second week of September. Like,
oh man.
Right? I mean, I kind of
because I can't.
I kind of am joking, but it may actually stay that hot, especially in the southern half of the country for a long time. So that's the number one question I'm getting. Is this just like, you know, the news media making a big deal of a summer heat wave? It's summer anyways, it should be hot. Or is this really exceptionally unusual? You know, and the bottom line is that we're going to end up with this being the warmest July ever recorded in our country, and it's going to be the warmest month ever recorded for the globe. So this is not normal, this is exceptional. And these cities are all on pace for the hottest July they've ever recorded. So that's obviously Phoenix, Flagstaff, Tucson, Austin, Corpus Christi, Baton Rouge, and we've been telling you the stories about how hot South Florida has been. And the thing is, even at night, no one's getting relief. You know, we got climate change and we've got all the urban development in all these cities. It's just keeping these temperatures in the air. It stays hot right on the ground. The pavement just holds it in. The temperatures just don't drop at night. You don't get that relief. So, you know, once again, we're extending from Florida all the way to California with our heat alerts. And let's see who the hottest is right now. You know, already feels like 109 in Montgomery, Alabama. Miami, once again, above 100. That continues their streak there. And later on this afternoon, when we hit our highs in the west, we'll continue to see those temperatures going pretty high. And we will be close to records and break a few records once again. And this will continue all weekend long, Chris.
All right, these extreme storms as well. And some of the pictures we saw, the ones in North Carolina, the torrential downpours. What about that?
We're not expecting tornadoes today. Doesn't mean we can't get one or two isolated, but we are watching a chance of severe storms from the Albany area towards Hartford, western half of central Massachusetts, Connecticut also, and then a larger area from Memphis. Storms heading once again through Atlanta, and then eventually making their way towards areas of Georgia. Currently in the Northeast, the other story we have to watch out, we have scattered storms starting. Of course, it wasn't too long ago. We had all those horrific flooding stories in Vermont. We've had numerous rounds of storms in this area, and we are under a flash flood watch. And Chris, I want to end by showing you the video of the North Carolina, Nash County tornado again that we showed at the beginning of this whole segment. The thing that just blows my mind, I have never seen someone filming their roof being peeled off their house. There's no flinching, there's no cursing, it's just, and then to your left, the neighbor's house that's only yards away comes rolling right there through the field. I don't know the backstory, but this person was 30 to 40 yards away from being that debris and rolling down towards that red truck. And,
Exactly.
yeah, that's the house that just got destroyed next door.
That's wild. I mean, obviously, kind of like the kid in the car, right? This is a warning. I know we all like to record our lives, every bit of it, but that seems like maybe a little bit much, Bill Cairns.
Yeah. You know, we never see the video of the people that didn't survive that with them.
There's that. Bill Cairns, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. We got some news breaking last night, and NBC News has confirmed that hackers linked to China have accessed the email accounts of the U.S. ambassador to China, Nicholas Burns, and the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia. The breach lasted from May through mid-June, right around the same time that Secretary of State Antony Blinken made his historic visit to China. According to a U.S. official familiar with the matter, the hack was part of a targeted intelligence gathering campaign, but it appears the breach was limited to the diplomat's unclassified email accounts. Joining me now live from the Aspen Security Forum, Andrea Mitchell, NBC News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and host of Andrea Mitchell Reports right here on MSNBC. I know, Andrea, you sat down with the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, just a short time ago. What did he have to say about China?
Well, a lot about China and the rest of the world, but about China, we did talk about exactly what Priscilla Thompson and Bill Cairns and you were just talking about, climate change, because our special envoy on climate, Secretary John Kerry, was just in Beijing last week, and China refused to agree to any kind of reduction in emissions, and without China agreeing, nothing is going to happen globally. They are the world's greatest emitter of pollution, of all, they emit more pollutants than all the other developed nations in the world combined. So that was a big issue. But of course, I asked about the hack of Nick Burns, the ambassador who came to Beijing from being the head of this security forum for many years, so well known to everyone here. And it's alarming, Chris. It was alarming because it was novel. It was a novel approach of a cyber attack that was so unusual. They did discover it, and it happened just as Secretary Blinken was preparing to try to repair relations, which had really crashed after the U.S. shot down that spy balloon. Let's watch.
I can't speak to the direct impact of any particular incident. I can say that the incident in question affected only our unclassified system. As soon as we actually at the State
But that's a
Department
big
detected
deal. The unclassified system is huge.
We now have an ongoing investigation that will determine the impact. As soon as we detected it, which goes back some time, we took immediate steps both to make sure that we were strengthening our protections and defenses, of course reported it immediately to Microsoft to make sure that they were doing everything possible. And as a general matter, I've had opportunities to speak directly to Chinese counterparts about the deep concern we would have over anything targeting the U.S. government, targeting U.S. companies, targeting U.S. citizens, and the fact that we'll take appropriate action if we need to in response.
former officials, cyber experts tell me that one reason this is so alarming is that 90% of the State Department and the rest of the government's business is done in the unclassified space. So the Chinese got a whole lot of information about America's plans, the administration's plans for resetting the relationship with China and a lot of other countries as well. And they've got to figure out what was essentially an invasion of our sovereignty.
And they wonder how come we don't trust them. They get mad whenever we blow up a spy balloon over our continental United States. They wonder how come that we're so paranoid, I guess the word would be, antsy, in seeing any type of invasion above or on or around our heads or even in our computers, that how come we take this so personal? Well, whenever you just got through having 1 million people die in America pertaining to COVID, knowing that COVID come from that area, I think that group of people has a right to be paranoid. Now, I'm still leaning towards the degree, unless it gets proved otherwise, that it was North Korea, that, part of China, that basically impenetrated China in bringing that disease over there, COVID. But that's strictly a gut feeling that I've had now since the beginning phases of all this, because it was North Korea that kept screaming and hollering, we got a Christmas present for the Americans, and then boom, bam, all of a sudden, here come COVID. I was just trying to put common sense 2 and 2 together, that apparently he must have known that something was going to happen, because America got his Christmas present, which was over 1 million people that died. So whenever you have this type of activity going on, you're going to be more sensitive to these areas, especially whenever the representative of America just got through being hacked on a sophisticated, secret website or email that he had over there. It's unbelievable how come these people are that naive in wondering how come we're paranoid. Just like Russia doing what Russia's doing right now with Ukraine. It was Russia that blowed up the dam over there. It was Russia that started a war illegitimately with the Ukrainians. It was Russia that has now recently blowed up a whole granary of grain over there that's going to affect the world and the world's prices all over the world. These things are very, very concerning to the American people, or they are to a great deal of the American people, especially those that has patriotic obligations and that has made commitments as far as making an oath, a sworn oath, to protect us, our family, either from foreign or domestic enemies. And of course, whenever you put that together with what happened in 9/11, that was basically 20 plus years ago, we have a right to be paranoid. We have a right to be antsy, or what would be the other word for it, being overzealous in thinking that somebody or anybody or all the above is out to get us. I mean, I've been saying this now ever since Donald Trump became president, that we are under an invasion. And it's not just a physical invasion regarding all the illegal immigrants that's coming over here to America. And it's not just Mexicans. It's not just South Americans. It's people from China. It's people all over the world that's coming here. And they're not coming here by and large illegally for good purposes. If they're coming over here illegally, odds are they've got illegitimate motives in coming over here to begin with, because if they was really, really upfront with their honesty, I truly believe that they would try to circulate into America on a much more legal status than an illegal status, because once you come over here, you're basically going to have to live like a fugitive. And I don't think that they realize that, but eventually, I'm going to just use the company Titan. About, I guess it was probably about 6-7 years ago over in Union City, they had a shakedown where the feds went in there and found, I don't know how many illegals working for Tyson Chicken Company, rounded them up, put them all in buses, and headed them across the border. Whenever we have jobs being stolen from us, and whenever you're using up precious resources that we have over here, that we really don't have enough for our own selves, much less to pass out to the whole world, these things are very troubling to the American people. And if they're not, something is wrong with the American people. If these things that I just got through mentioning and she just got through mentioning and pertaining to the weather and the global warming happening all over the world, if these things are not troubling to the average American citizen that claims that they have great patriotic love for our country and for their fellow man, if they are not deeply troubled by all this stuff, then to me, there's something wrong with them. They either don't care, or maybe they're against us to begin with. Maybe there's some of those hidden, infiltrated, secret societies or pockets that's working in exchange toward trying to bring America down to begin with. Because whenever I was in Atlanta and Florida, down toward Miami, I couldn't tell you at the amount of body shops that I went to that I knowed was nothing more than chop shops. Chop shops. Everything was being handled under the table. Out of sight, out of mind. Everybody was off the grid. Vehicles that come in usually come out in pieces, or come in pieces and come in another way. I mean, this stuff is going on in New York. It's going on in Chicago. It's going on in LA. It's going on in Houston. It's going on in every major big city here in America, to where you basically have a whole I guess the right word would be illegal agencies that's working under the table, that's hiding from open population. Basically a syndicate. And if you look at it, there's a syndicate in New York, there's a syndicate in Chicago, there's a syndicate in Atlanta, there's a syndicate in Miami, there's all these different syndicates, but they're all basically doing the same thing. Which is what? Working under the table. Working with dark money, hidden dark money that nobody can trace them in. And these people are involved, most of them, in the various affairs that usually is illegal. But what really gets me is whenever Russia would do something over to the Ukrainians over there, and then they'll try to twist it or manipulate it around and acting like, oh, no, it wasn't us. It was them. They're the terrorists. They're the ones that has caused this. Or somebody like China that says the Americans are paranoid. They're paranoid. Why is this? How come the Americans are the way that they are? Well, whenever you got stuff going on around you and you're losing life, we've lost over 1 million people in the past 3 years. Or 4 years whenever COVID hit. These things are very disturbing to me. I lost a good friend. I lost several good friends pertaining to COVID. And you know what? I don't want to lose no more friends over COVID or anything even close to being related around a chemical biological disease. Regardless whether it come from China, regardless whether it was engineered by North Korea, regardless whether it come from Europe or some other part of the world. I'm just using that for an example, not metaphorically speaking. We don't want to see destruction. We don't want to see hardship. We don't want to see gas go out the roof. We don't want to see food to the point that you can't afford to buy a loaf of bread. We don't want to see diseases. We don't want to see pain and anguish and destruction coming up into our lives pertaining to global warming and the oceans warming up and killing certain creatures and killing and I forgot the name of it now. I'm not a marinist, not fossils, but coral reefs, killing coral reefs that are basically part of the cleaning system of our oceans. We don't want to see these intense major deluges. We don't want to see these major heat domes break out to the point of seeing fires like we've seen 3 and 4 and 5, 6 years ago over out into the west. We don't want to see these things. And if you do, there is obviously something wrong with you. And if you're not willing to speak out pertaining to these intolerable events that we're going through right now, I tend to wonder, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you that you wouldn't speak out pertaining to various situations that has brought so much grief and despair and hardship up into our lives? I'm not fighting for me no more. I'm fighting for us. And I've been fighting for us all along. But I'm definitely fighting for the children that has recently been born. I'm fighting for those that have been born for the past 15, 20 years, and I'm fighting for those that hadn't even been born yet. That's who I'm fighting for. Because in the direction that we're going in, and China can say whatever they want to say pertaining to not backing down on the poisonous gases that they're steadily throwing up into the atmosphere, because for the past 2 to 5 years, especially last year during Christmas time, I have never in my entire life seen so much plastic, regardless whether it was plastic toys, plastic trinkets, plastic jewelry, plastic watches, plastic covering that covers over stuff. I have never in my life seen so much imitation of plastic, rubber and plastic in my entire life. And every one of those items that I just got through mentioning, I don't care if it's a Barbie doll, I don't care if it's a plastic trunk, I don't care if it's a plastic wrapper that goes around sheeting. Every one of those items that's got plastic in it has petroleum, mineral, crude oil substances in that. Same way with your automobiles, with your bumpers. Same way with your dashes on your automobiles. Same way with your rubber on your cars. Same way with a lot of your interior on the cars. There's so much plastic now that's being created that's, once more, a big contributor towards all the smoke and the carbon dioxide and the poisons going up into the atmosphere. And plus, we're draining the system below our feet that much more quicker and that much more obvious in the direction that we're all going in. And people wonder, well, what's wrong with Dennis? What's wrong with Dennis? How come he's acting this way? I'm sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that various people that has been touched by God have had a sense of urgency about their message like never ever before. Regardless whether it was in the old Bible or the new Bible. And you can see this again and again and again through various prophets and people that was touched or motivated by a supernatural spirit. People that would be willing to walk for miles and miles and miles in hot, brutal sand just to be able to pass the gospel and tell people that God is real and that we live in a spiritual domain pertaining to the Lord Jesus Christ. And unless you have had that awakening, that life-changing awakening moment in your life, you're not going to be able to relate to a lot of people like me that is on fire for Christ, is on fire in trying to help humanity, is on fire towards putting out advisories and warnings. those that don't care are acting like they don't care are usually those that's already deceived, are usually those that are just rotten, no good for nothing scoundrels to begin with. And those are part of the people that has driven us off into the direction that we're in right now. Those are the people that's been deceived. And if you hadn't been deceived by stupidity, you can be deceived by greed, like all these oil petroleum companies. And if you hadn't been deceived by greed, you've been deceived by the non-willingness toward not wanting to participate and being boisterous and tell how that God has motivated you. But even Noah, I can look back in time and try to relate to what Noah was going through during the time that God actually tangibly spoke to Noah about destroying humanity. I can only begin to use my imagination just a little bit of the urgency of what Noah and his family was doing towards driving nail after nail after nail, cutting wood and driving wood and doing things according to God's plans and building that big boat. And they wasn't just working an hour or two a day and laying down their tools and resting. They wasn't just working 5 hours a day and laying down their tools and resting. Some of them was probably working day and night, endlessly, to the point that they was almost so tired that they couldn't even get up and drive another nail or saw off another plank. And in the meantime, while Noah himself was driven this way, he himself was taking on the urgency of still passing out the remaining message, which was the main message, which was, if you people do not repent and turn from your sinful and wicked ways, God is fixing to destroy you. Well, how's he going to destroy us, Noah? He's going to destroy you with a flood. What's a flood, Noah? It's going to be rain. It's going to come out of the sky. And you keep in mind, according to the Bible, those people had never actually seen rain. They had big dews, and they did have water systems that provided water for the animals and for fish and for various mammal life and etc. But as far as it actually raining, rain was not invented until God finally shut that door. When God shut that door, the rain clouds commenced to raining, not just in one area, but all over the planet at one time. A major deluge had been created by the Almighty. And it rained, 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 according to the Bible, for 40 days and 40 nights. For 40 days and 40 nights. Could you only imagine the activities was going on in some of the low-lying areas with the people that was living at that time, that was trying to usher up a mountain or a cliff, that was trying to get out of the way of the flooding waters and the storm clouds and the wind and everything else that was going on at that time? Could you only imagine the chaos that was going on with the planet at that time, including the animals? The animals had to go through the same type of shocking events that humanity had to go through, because the animals died. That was the whole primary purpose for Noah building such of a big ark, towards him putting every animal in the ark. And it wasn't that Noah went out into the wilderness and grabbed up the lions and grabbed up the tigers and grabbed up the horses and grabbed up the mules and grabbed up all these other animals, those that wouldn't be able to live in the water. God done that. Not only did God do that, but he took lions and tigers and very, very vicious animals and settled them down to the degree that they was no longer vicious. Because ordinarily, whenever you get a hungry lion around a bunch of other animals that isn't lions, and he's hungry to begin with, he's going to take advantage of that situation. Plus, he's going to eat any and everything that he could, including humans around him. So God had to perform a miraculous miracle, not just on the outside of the boat, not just in bringing the animals into the boat, but he had to create a miracle in settling down every animal within the boat during the 40 days and 40 nights of the major rainfall, the deluge. But then God had to continue to keep everything settled until Noah finally took some doves and let them out, according to the Bible, and one of them come back with a twig in his mouth, indicating that the waters had started receding, and it wasn't just to a matter of time before they was going to be able to see land. In between the 40 days and 40 nights of the rainfall, from the time that they actually discovered land, who knows? That may have took another 90 days. That may have took another 6 months. I don't know. I don't even know if it's recorded in the time frame in how long that they was actually out there bobbling around on a big body of water, an ocean, a sea, depending solely upon their ingenuity skills towards building a boat that wouldn't sink. That's now filled full of animals. People can't understand. They can't use enough incredible imagination to be able to sit down and relate to the urgency of what was going on during the time that it was going on. And I'm using that as an example towards the reason why that I've made as many videos as I've made. You know, I have people all the time, as soon as they see my automobile, man, oh man, did you got enough stickers on your truck? And my first response is, no, I do not. No, you don't. You got stickers everywhere. I go, these stickers are representing the United States military in most part. Either that or Bible scripture. I said, pertaining to what them men and women have sacrificed our freedoms for, I do not have enough stickers representing me, myself, and I being not only a patriot, but being a advocate for our military. I do not have enough. In other words, if I could spray it down and make it glow at night, I'd probably do that too. Because what them men and women have sacrificed for our freedoms, we can never repay. Just like Ronald Reagan said, there's an element that you cannot repay another human being for, and that's the element of a human being that's willing to die for our freedoms. You can't repay that. You can try to repay that, but in actuality, you cannot take a life that has been taken and replace it with another life. It's impossible. So the urgency, whenever I listen to programs like this, it even goes higher than what it was the last time that I made a video, which was yesterday, and the day before that, which was the day before that, and the day before that. The urgency continues to rise even as NASA, they said a while ago that NASA has discovered new findings pertaining to the world even getting hotter than what they thought. The oceans below, out towards the Atlantic Ocean, going out towards the Horn of Africa. There's parts of the oceans out there that's 90 degrees. Below Cuba and South America, almost 90 degrees. And there's areas in the Gulf that's well over 90 degrees. We're seeing the temperatures rise more and more and more every day. And I'm telling you, it's not coming necessarily because of what the atmosphere above our heads pertaining to the ozone layer is causing to the world to respond and react as far as the heating up. The heating up is pertaining to human activity, and the heating up is pertaining to draining the oil resources out of the ground that people like China felt like that they could use it and abuse it from now on in and there wasn't going to be no repercussions because of it. But yet now they'll have a big deluge over there, or yet now they'll have a big tremendous problem over there like COVID, and they still ain't smart enough to figure out that the very thing that everybody's been telling them about is in fact true. Like I said, whenever I walked into different Walmarts and retail stores this year, along about Christmas, I have never in my life seen so much plastic inventions in my entire life. They must have mole after mole after, they must have trillions of moles over there that makes everything from a Barbie doll to a back bumper on a Toyota Corolla. And which a lot of those bumpers are made out of different compounds, but every one of the bumpers, including that Barbie doll, including that mascara kit that woman gets and buys to take the mascara, the paint out to put on her face, every one of those items has petroleum oil in it of some form. Some of the bumpers will have actually 6, 7 different compounds, but one of the main ingredients to those bumpers to make that bumper flexible is petroleum oil. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up for yourself. But I've never seen the United States be this inundated by oil. Now you keep in mind, I'm 62 years old, and I can remember a time whenever you bought a toy, ordinarily it was a toy that was going to last almost forever. If it wasn't made out of hard metal, it was made out of some sort of tin metal, and hardly ever you got anything that was plastic, and then whenever you did, it was hardcore plastic. I mean, some of the stuff that you could take and probably run over it with a truck, and you probably wouldn't crack it or bust it or do anything to it. Not this stuff today. This stuff today is just basically tissue. It's Mickey Mouse stuff in comparison to the stuff that I was acquainted with whenever I was a kid growing up. And then we was imitated with glass, and then glass and metal, and then all of a sudden here come plastic. Well, for the past 35, 40 years, I have seen plastic that has inundated our world. And I tend to wonder, because of everything we touch, everything that we come in contact with, regardless whether it's a mascara kit or inside our vehicles, in rubbing down the dash or whatever, there's just so much plastic now. I tend to wonder if the oil content in that plastic, including, they claim, little bitty shreds of plastic that are still left whenever they blow up and make a bottle, a clear bottle, and put water in it. I tend to wonder if the oil petroleum products isn't the main ingredients that's causing so many people to have cancer, are causing people to become obese, are causing people to have so many other illnesses. Now I realize a lot of the obesity in this, especially in our children today, is primarily because of not only what they're eating and drinking, but it's because of their physical routine lifestyles. Whenever I was growing up, from the time I got off the bus, we was busy doing something. I don't care if it was coming a snowstorm or if it was coming a lightning and storm. Odds are we was tinkering out in the garage, or we was messing with the hogs, or messing with the cows, or we was in the garden, or we was putting in a crop or taking out a crop, or we was beating and banging on cars trying to make an extra dollar to be able to feed our faces. In other words, we stayed heavily proactive. Dad would plant sometimes 2 or 3 acres of okra. Sometimes we'd put out 1,000 slips of tomatoes. Sometimes we'd put out 2 or 3 acres of sweet corn. Sometimes an acre or 2 of strawberries. I mean, we'd go on and on and on. These was areas like having a bunch of Jersey cows that you don't get no relief from. Thank God we never did have no Jersey cows. But we had everything else that was just as bad. Demanding. Pigs getting out almost every other day. Hogs. Didn't have good fencing. Cows that kick you. Kick you harder than a freaking truck hitting you. I mean, we was active day and night and day. No wonder we had to have decent meals to eat, because if we didn't, I guess we would just die. Well, these kids today ain't active like that. They think that their mind being active playing video games is work. They think their mind being active towards going to school is work. My God, whenever we go to school, that was like a vacation. We finally got a rest from working on the farm. Wow, we get to sit around and listen to the teacher. And usually it's either air conditioning in the summer or they got heat in the winter. And man, that was a relief too, because usually, depending upon where we was either freezing to death in the winter or we were burning up in the summer, because I don't think we ever got an air conditioner until probably in the late 70s. I think it was the late 70s before we ever got air conditioner. And up until then, the heat that we used was a wood stove that we usually not only heated with wood, but we also got big loads of coal at the time. We would buy coal by the ton, and we'd usually go through a whole ton of it in the wintertime, especially if it was a harsh winter. But you know, whenever I tell people these stories about this, there's so many of them that just can't relate to this. Just like there's so many people that can't relate to the urgencies whenever God puts a burden in somebody's heart towards doing something for God. They really can't relate to how come that person, you know how they categorize people like me? I'm a fanatic. I am an out and out fanatic. I could go around and do a survey in this area that people know me, and I guarantee you 1 out of 10 may say, well, I think he's probably all right. But the other 9 would say, oh, no, there's something wrong with him. He's a fanatic. He does things weird. He paints things all over his vehicle. He passes out material. He's this, he's that. You know why they can't relate to me? Because they've never had that same experience. Just like people that's never had cows, they can't relate having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. Don't matter if it's hot, don't matter if it's coming a snowstorm or an ice storm, and milk cows, and do it again in the afternoon, then do it again in the morning, then do it again in the afternoon. There is no end to a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, unless you yourself have experienced these experiences. But in the meantime, we got 9 out of 10 that sit around and twiddle their thumbs and say, oh, no, that man's a fanatic. There's something wrong with him. Well, did they not think the same thing about Jesus? Did they not think the same thing about Noah? Did they not think the same thing about Moses pertaining to the Pharaohs? Did they not think the same thing about Peter, Paul, John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke? Did they not think the same thing about all the other prophets in the Bible that's been touched by God that had a divine message of urgency, urgency, urgency? They thought the same thing. There's something wrong with these people. Yeah, there's something wrong with us. We've been given an assignment. We was given a responsibility. And our responsibility is to get our message out there as quickly and as efficiently and as adequately as I can, or as we can. And even to this day, I still, as far as I know, am not supported by the Alamo Baptist Church. They're just right down the road here, about 2 miles from where I live, where my grandmother and our ancestors helped to establish that church. As far as I know, they still not in support of the Windmill Ministries missions. As far as I know, I ain't heard of nobody up in Cydonia, Tennessee, which is about 2 miles from my house, that's got 4 or 5 churches over there. At least 3 that I know of. I still haven't heard no report from any of them saying, Juby, we're behind you. We support you. We have the same burdens that you have towards lost souls and towards getting this message out to the world, pertaining to the world warming up. And if we don't change our wicked and sinful ways, that basically we're going to destroy ourselves. I have yet to hear anybody in Kenton, Tennessee, Sharon, Tennessee, Martin, Tennessee, Dresden, Tennessee, or within the next 7 to 10, 15 counties around here that I know people's heard of me and know about me, has yet to endorse even so much as a letter writing to 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, saying, you are in our prayers. We support you emotionally. We support you psychologically. We support you spiritually. We support you financially. I have not gotten no mail, no type of welcoming for the past 30 plus years since I've stepped out into the eyes of the general public. Now you wonder how come every day that goes by, it gets a little more urgent, it gets a little more urgent, it gets a little more urgent. I'm pretty sure that Noah felt the same way because he knew the earnings of God that had placed that burden up into his life towards building this boat. And all in all, I don't know if the days was going down faster than what they do then. I mean, our clock around here is basically 24 hours. I think we lose about 2.5 minutes every year. But I personally believe that the world was spinning a whole lot faster in the days of Noah. And that's the reason why that he allotted his days towards being like 80 years. It took like 80 years to build that boat. Well, if the world was spinning a third faster than what it's spinning now, that means every day that rotated was probably on an 18-hour period. Somewhere 18, 19 hours, the world would spin. That'd be a day. 18, 19 hours, here the sun come up again. Well, they was counting things just like we count things, 365 days out of the year, basically, and they was counting things in the yearly proceedings. And I tend to wonder if that's the reason why that whenever we hear about Methuselah and all these other people that lived to be like 500, 600, 800 years old, that's the reason why that their time clock was not only different than ours is today and how they equate things, but actually the world was spinning a lot faster back then. In other words, from daylight to dark, instead of it being every 24 hours, it was more like every 19 hours. Or maybe even every 18 hours. And if I'm not mistaken, scientists have proved this. If I'm not mistaken. And of course, if sun's coming up and going down, sun's coming up every 18, 19 hours, your years is going to be a whole lot more quicker together. You're still going to count the years as being the same. But in actuality, whenever they say a year is a year, it's really only about 3/4 of a year. So your time clock, according to your calculations, is going a whole lot quicker. And of course, after the flood, I think things really slowed down tremendously, because if you look at the Bible, after the flood, there was no more people that lived 300, 400, 500, 800, 1,200 years old. That stopped after the flood. Why do you think it done that for? Because now the world was weighted down twice, if not 3 times heavier than what it was before, because before it didn't have all these oceans and seas. It didn't have all these land mass, water masses all over the world. Well, now you got all this water mass all over the world. So the world slowed down tremendously. And since then, it's been getting slower and slower and slower. Like I said, I think scientists has calculated it that we lose basically about 2.5 minutes every year. That means whenever I was born, I'm just going to use this as an equation. Whenever I was born in 1961, let's say the world was right on its money towards spinning every 24 hours every day. Every day. 365 days a year. Well, today, instead of it taking 24 hours to spin in a cycle, now it's more like 24 hours and, let's say, 5 minutes. Or 8 minutes. I don't know how to calculate all that, but if you do it every year, 2.5 minutes every year, that can have a profound effect on the timeline. Your body's still going to be working the same. Trees are going to come up. Trees are going to die. The seasons are going to be the same ordinarily. But the world's slowing down. Especially in comparison to what was going on before the flood versus after the flood. I just wanted to throw that in there to my viewers to let them know the urgency has not changed. Whenever God gives somebody a divine message in being a messenger, that urgency today still burns within my soul and within my heart. If not more today than what it did in 1988 whenever I went through all that stuff that I went through. much less the two hands that come out of heaven in 1983 that helped to save my life, to where I should have went ahead and got cut in half. That people didn't believe me then. They didn't believe me whenever I told my story in 1983. They thought I was a joker. They thought I was a comedian. They thought I was a hoax. They thought I was a liar. And then whenever the occurrences took place in my life in 1988, pertaining to the crown of thorns, the angels coming down, me meeting Satan in the flesh, pertaining to the Arab family over Martin, Tennessee, oh, they really thought I was off my bonkers. They thought, man, oh man, this guy here, he's sure enough out in left field. He sure enough done lost all his marbles. Well, that's what they thought about all the other prophets of God. That's what they thought. Until God shut that door. Bam! And whenever he shut that door, they started screaming and hollering, help, help, let us in, let us in, let us in. And what does the Bible say whenever that occurs? He's going to say on that day, depart from me, for I have never known thee. And those people in that flood went through a horrible, horrible event, like most people cannot even take their little finite being-sized brain and begin to imagine the chaotic activity that was going on for at least, out of that 40 days, I'm going to say within at least a week, within the first 7 days, it was just total chaos. Because they'd never seen rain before. They had never, ever witnessed water coming out of the sky, much less thunder and lightning and all the above. Well, if God can create fire and brimstone that comes down from heaven, if God can turn the water into blood and brings frogs and all kinds of other curses that happened to the Egyptians back during Moses' day, if God can create that, don't you think that God can basically do whatever he wants to do? He can. And he will, based upon how true we are and how close we are to doing his will. And right now, the world is not doing his will. And right now, the urgency of the world warming up is only intensifying and getting more and more urgent every day. Now, whenever the scientists told Jimmy Carter, whenever he was president, I don't forgot now what year it was. I think it was in the early 70s. May have been the mid 70s. But whenever they explained to him that the world was going to basically stand up on its head 30 years from now, and his reply was, well, get back with me in 29. To show you how arrogant that the human population is, or has been, you cannot take the damages that we have done to this planet and all of a sudden turn it off and change the direction in the trajectory of the way that we are going, like a switch on your house to be able to turn the lights off and on. Once you start into that trajectory, it's going to take everybody, including China, at one time to say, you know what, we're going to have to readjust our way of life. We're either going to have to start walking, or we're going to have to start getting horses, or we're all going to have to start using bikes, or we're going to have to go to another alternative energy if we're going to survive as a world, as a planet. Because the way, the trajectory that I have seen just within the past 5 years, the way that the world is warming up and our seasons is getting way off, is becoming hotter and hotter and hotter. If we make it 10 years from now without total annihilation in certain parts of the world, in certain areas, on certain continents, if we make it that long, we're going to be very, very lucky. And that's providing that we do stop, and that's providing that we do put this on urgency status, and that's providing that we all regroup at one time. And if we're all not willing to do that, then it's going to doom the rest of us. I mean, you can have somebody like me or Al Gore or whoever, Nova, scientist, NASA, whoever, screaming and hollering at the top of your lungs. And if you can't get the people's attention in the direction that we're going, either one or two things is happening. Either they don't care, or they're actually welcoming the end of the world. In other words, they're in behind this. They want it to actually occur. Either that, or they're just so blinded and hard-headed. And I still don't believe that Donald Trump, after this length of time, still believes that he won the election. Now, he may get up on TV and try to persuade me and you into that, but deep down inside, I don't think that man's crazy. I think that he knows exactly that he lost that race, but because of pride and because of stupidity, he's refusing to acknowledge to the world that I had made a mistake. Similar towards what everybody's doing right now about global warming. We have made a mistake.
I also talked about the president's very open warning through the New York Times and Tom Friedman to Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu about some of his recent policies and the U.S. concerns about that, about Russia, clearly Prigozhin, Putin, all the other issues, the American soldier in North Korea, the entire interview, we're linking to it, of course.
I don't know what else she's got into. I done talked so long, I done forgot now what she was even saying. I think it had something to do with global warming, or I thought it did. Now all of a sudden she starts talking about somebody doing something over in North Korea, into South Korea. Do want to touch up on this real quick pertaining to this guy here, Bennett, Mr. Bennett. That was an entertainer that has affected so many people's lives throughout generation after generation after generation, that I'm going to go as far as to say has probably had as much of an effect upon to not only the American culture,
24 hours for one and done,
but the world culture in general, that he's had just as much of an effect as the Beatles or Elvis Presley or any other major group out there that's ever come and gone.
Today, the music world has lost one of its most remarkable, resilient, and revered talents. Tony Bennett has died at the age of 96. In a career spanning more than 70 years and over 150 recordings, Bennett won 19 Grammys and continued to perform for fans around the world well into his 90s, even as he battled Alzheimer's. NBC's Morgan Radford has a look back at his remarkable life and career.
Oh, the good life.
Tony Bennett,
I found you just in time.
the great singer of the Great American Songbook.
The way you look tonight.
His music defining a generation with shiny tuxedos, big bands, and smoky jazz joints.
I know I'd go from rags to riches.
But before he was Tony, he was Anthony Dominic Benedetto, a child of the Great Depression, born and raised by a single mother in Queens, New York.
When I was 10 years old, they said, "We love the way you paint and we love the way you sing." And so I said, "That's who I am."
He dropped out of high school to support his family at age 16 and was later drafted by the Army, serving in World War II.
I decided that when I get out of the Army, I'm going to go into show business.
He got his big break in 1949 when entertainer Bob Hope saw him singing in a New York City club and hired him with one suggestion, that he change his name to Tony Bennett.
The best is yet to come, and babe, won't that be fine?
A star was born.
San Francisco.
In 1962, Bennett topped the charts with his hit I Left My Heart in San Francisco, winning his first of many Grammys.
As I approach the prime of my life.
As his career skyrocketed, he also became an activist in the civil rights movement while developing his other love, painting.
When you get lucky enough to nail one painting that really looks good, it's really a quiet celebration.
But there was a dark underbelly to his success. Bennett developed a drug addiction in the 1970s and took a 10-year hiatus. He made a comeback in the 80s, becoming a favorite of the MTV generation.
What do you say we do one for the MTV crowd?
Bennett married 3 times and raised 4 children. In 2007, he tied the knot with Susan Crowe after the two dated for decades. Meanwhile, his popularity continued to surge in the 2000s when he recorded duets with megastars like Paul McCartney,
the very thought of you,
Elton John,
my fate is up to you.
and Lady Gaga.
That's why lady is a trap.
My whole life I love what I do.
In 2021, the singer revealed his Alzheimer's diagnosis and announced both a final album and concert with Lady Gaga to mark his 95th birthday.
Yet I get a kick out of you.
A final farewell, but a lasting legacy.
What a life I'm in love.
Morgan Radford, NBC News, New York.
And that'll do us for this week here in America. God bless. And good luck to all of us. Shalom.